It's Sunday morning, and that means it's time to go on the record. Her election night upset win stunned the State House. State Representative Nika Elugardo, the new representative and progressive voice on Beacon Hill. And the Bay State's housing crunch, her views on renter rights and the reaction one of her proposals is receiving.
Robert Mueller has spoken. Now what?
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to On the Record this morning on this Sunday morning with News Center 5's political reporter Janet Wu. I'm Matt Harding. Our guest this morning is State Representative Nika Elugardo. Her primary win last September shook up the state's political scene. She represents the 15th district. If you don't know what that means, it includes JP, Mission Hill, Rosendale, parts of Brookline. Her CV is impressive. She graduated from MIT with a degree in urban planning, and she's also a graduate of Harvard's Kennedy School of Government and has a law degree from Boston University, and that led to a broad career as a community advocate. So, congratulations on the win, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Ed.
Great to
Thanks,
have you.
Janet.
It's great to have you here. Many would say that your victory over former Massachusetts House Ways and Means Chair Jeffrey Sanchez was even perhaps more remarkable and unexpected than Ayanna Pressley's over Michael Capuano. Do you believe this gives you carte blanche to push Beacon Hill's agenda further left? And does House leadership hear that same message from the voters? At least your sense of it so far.
Right. Well, I would say House leadership is definitely hearing the message from the voters. That message didn't come just through my race. I think there were a lot of lower profile races where people were running against maybe not incumbents, but other candidates who were expected to win. And the message of change, not just like in a general sense, but we want to see literal and very specific policy shift more than they have been, came through loud and clear. And the class that I have as a result is really fantastic.
Were you as surprised personally by your victory as I think a lot of people throughout Beacon Hill were?
Okay, so I've never said this publicly, and I'm going to go ahead and out it now.
Okay.
I was surprised that I didn't win by more.
Well, there you go. That's
and
good.
So Rep. Sanchez really was catching up. We're a numbers people, my team, myself, and we noticed him catching up towards the end. And so he got back some of those votes that I think I had started to win away. And, I didn't want to say that early because, it's sensitive. But I wanted to win by a lot. I won by 4%.
So let me drill down on that. Why did you think you were going to win by a larger margin?
Well, we did some research, including a poll, but also some more anecdotal research. And our sense was that 2 out of 3 voters preferred bold, progressive leadership with a history of action on progressive values and not just having progressive values, over being able to bring strong resources into the district through relationships with leadership. And so we presented 2 positive forms of leadership, the form of leadership that we perceived Rep. Sanchez running on and the form of leadership that I've lived my life on. And we realized that if I meet every voter, 2 out of 3 of them will vote for me. And I know I couldn't meet every voter, but we counted up what I needed.
So you were telling me, how many did you actually knocked on the door and you met maybe how many, do you think?
Let's see, I knocked on 5,500 doors. I met around 2,000.
There you go.
But my team knocked on 43,000 plus doors and met a bunch more.
Right after you were elected, you made a comment that raised eyebrows, accusing the Democratic Party of being straight up racist.
Right.
What did you mean by that?
Well, some people know what I mean by structural racism. And what that means is, for example, in American institutions, if our behaviors and policies are rooted in a historical practice that was based 100 years ago or generations ago around preserving a certain majority, which could be an ethnic or a gender majority or other types of majority, if we haven't analyzed and changed that, we will continue those same practices. So even though we might all look different, we'll have the same behaviors that shut out people, which is especially important when you're talking about local politics, where a representative should be able to look, sound, talk, and work just like the rest of the people in the district. They're not supposed to be professional politicians. Local representatives are supposed to be people who really understand their area. And that is generally true, but there are a lot of people that are shut out from that process because they don't look, act, and think like we typically think a politician should.
Now, when you made that comment, it came out right after you got elected, but before you even entered Beacon Hill. And word spread quickly. Has it affected your first meeting with a lot of your colleagues or your first interaction with some of your colleagues?
I think that comment was not as surprising. I think if a white person had said there's structural racism in the party, I think people understand that.
But you're
I think
not white.
what was right. I think what was different for me is that several black women ran together and we all made very different statements about our races and our experience that got conflated. So for example, I said that I didn't ask the Democratic Party for help. I didn't expect them to help me under the circumstances, and so I didn't receive any. I didn't personally experience racism or sexism institutionally. Somewhat from a few constituents, I did get grabbed on the campaign trail and have to punch a guy once, but that was a constituent.
Grabbed?
Yeah, I usually say it a little more graphically in terms of where I got grabbed, but we're on television, so I'm keeping it
really?
Goodness.
Seriously?
Yeah, and then I was like, oh no, I punched a constituent. But it worked out. It was fine. He sort of apologized.
And was this early on in the campaign or towards the end?
Fortunately, it was towards the end, so I was feeling pretty confident in how to handle things at that point. I was with a male, and he had moved away to get something from the car in that instant.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my goodness. Wow.
Yeah, but from the party, I didn't have to deal with that, and so I think a lot of people interpreted my comments in light of other women who did have to deal with racism and sexism on the campaign trail from the party, and I support them in that, but that didn't happen to me, and people were angry because they thought, wow, you ran against a Latino and you're saying that it was racist, which I didn't experience that.
So I wanted to shift
clear that up.
not to interrupt this conversation, but I want to talk about rent control.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'd rather talk about rent control.
Okay. Before we get you talked about rent control, this is what the governor said about it. Rent control is one of your early issues. Housing, as we know, is a major issue for the governor. Here's what the governor said. Let's listen to him.
Rent control will stifle the production of new housing. That's exactly the wrong direction to go in.
The governor says it's the wrong direction to go.
Right.
I mean, he clearly says that. Do you agree with the governor?
Our bill, so I filed a bill with Mike Connolly with rent control, and I filed a separate bill, an act to protect elder housing that pulls some of the Mayor Boston's legislative work in to protect elder tenants using rent control. It's not about rent control, it's about municipal choice. And so we list a range of options from a tenant's tenant's option to purchase, right of first refusal, right to counsel, land trust, rent control. And what the bill says, and it's actually, we're still drafting it, but what the bill will say is we want towns and municipalities to have a choice about how they deal with the housing crisis that moves across every region of Massachusetts.
But the governor's point is that rent control would stifle the housing development.
Towns and municipalities that agree with them in their region, they can not opt in. And towns and municipalities that disagree can opt in. I think it depends on the dynamics, and also towns and municipalities can set the conditions under which rent control exists. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I don't think that's a decision that we should make at the governor's administration level, regardless of who the governor is or what their opinion is on what the market does, because it's a very regional decision.
Switching to another topic, another priority for you is prohibiting the use of Native American mascots by Massachusetts public schools. You would also like to see the state flag, which has a Native American, also changed. How do you think this is going to go over, considering the backlash from both sides on this issue nationally, not just here in Massachusetts?
I have a lot of trust in my colleagues. I had to learn why this was problematic, not so much the mascots, which I've known for a long time, but the flag and seal and the logo. So NICOB, the North American Indian Center of Boston, is in my district. And I reached out to them right away. Native heritage has been very important to me for most of my life. And I take it upon myself as a representative to think about who might not be represented based on who's in the building. And so I reached out to them, and one of the things they shared with me is not so much, not only the presence of a depiction of a type of native leader on the seal, but there's also a sword.
Doug, can you put it back up on the screen again? There is a sword above it, and see above with the arm. And for many indigenous people in Massachusetts, that's indicative. It reminds them of King Philip's War, and King Philip was a Wampanoag leader who was a chief over a confederation of tribes, and he was beheaded by not native people, and his head was put on a stick for 20 years to show the dominance
over folks, and there had been a treaty that many feel was violated. So there's a whole history and context that we need to understand of what this means.
I should say that there is a traditional explanation that the sword is a separate issue from the Native American that's depicted
absolutely.
there. I mean, there's been lots of explanations.
There are a lot of
about
explanations.
what the two of them mean.
But what we're about in Massachusetts, and I think this is something that Massachusetts people have in common, we believe in equal respect and dignity of every person. And we just can't have something representing our state in such a central way that is traumatizing for the people that we depended on to establish this state.
Are you ready for the OTR pop quiz?
Ooh. No.
This is the lighter part of the show, the lighter part of the show.
I fail pop quizzes.
Oh, well, that's all right. So do I. I mean, we went through this thing. I was 0 for 4. All right, it's time for the pop quiz, and we're looking for all things JP.
Okay.
And it's all multiple choice.
All right, C.
The first C. C as in yes or C as in ABC?
Okay. I pick C.
The Arnold Arboretum, a true Jamaica Plain jewel. Since 1908, a certain plant in the Arboretum has been celebrated every May. Is it the daffodil, the lilac, or the tulip?
Thanks for the softball. It's the lilac.
Yeah,
on Mother's Day, which I have a picture of my daughter on Mother's Day surrounded in lilacs at the Arboretum. That's
Lilac Sunday in recent years has fallen on Mother's Day. That's
right,
very
that's
good.
right.
All right. The second one is the Samuel Adams Brewery is located, as you know, in JP.
Yeah, although not in my district.
There is a new beer called When There Are 9. It's being released. Who was the beer attributed to? Ted Williams, who wore number 9, Abigail Adams, or Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
I'm going to go with RBG.
RBG. The Supreme Court Justice was asked, when will there be enough women on the High Court? Her answer was, when there are 9.
Love it.
We continue on the record with Nika Delgado right after this.